She spat the phrase like venom. "The best gift would be if you died." For a moment I felt my heart stop. My hands trembled, not from age, but from disbelief. My own daughter, the one I carried in my womb, looked at me as if I were dead weight. The words still echo inside me, sharp as razors. The room was filled with a heavy silence, broken only by the distant sound of a television playing in another room. She looked away, cold, as if she no longer recognized me as her mother. And in that instant I realized something bigger was at play. It wasn't just disrespect. It was an attempt to erase my existence, to push me into the abyss before my time. I looked at the loan agreement on the table. Each figure represented years of my sweat, entire days of struggle, nights when my back ached and my knees burned, but I wouldn't stop. I had carried entire families, like an ancient wooden bridge supporting thankless steps. And now that bridge was being burned before my eyes. What kind of daughter wishes her own mother dead? Do the love, the blood, and the history we share mean nothing? The question gnawed at me, yet at the same time it gave me strength. Because I knew that behind that coldness, there was something she wasn't telling. A hidden greed. A plot I hadn't yet uncovered. Her words didn't just wound me. They woke me up. It was like a bolt of lightning ripping through the darkest night, illuminating a path I hadn't yet seen. I could accept my role as a silent victim, or I could raise my head and weaponize humiliation. My breathing grew heavy. My nails dug into the wood of the table. I said nothing. I just stared at her, letting my silence speak for me. And in that moment within me, a decision began to dawn. A decision that would change everything. I was no longer just hurt. I was alert. And every detail, every shadow on her face, every barely concealed tremor in her voice, everything would be observed with new eyes. Because in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just an angry daughter. She was a threat. And when a black mother, scarred by life, realizes she's being threatened, something happens. Pain transforms into strength. The wound becomes a blade. And the world around us, so accustomed to seeing us in silence, begins to realize that silence can also be a scream about to explode. I sat before her, staring intently, trying to decipher what lay behind her words. Was it just fleeting anger or something deeper, more calculated? The silence between us felt like a desert, and my mouth felt dry, as if each choked word were sand choking me. My heart, however, beat steadily, reminding me that I was still alive, very much alive, despite the cruel desire she had shamelessly confessed. As she absent-mindedly fiddled with her phone, I noticed the stark contrast. Me, with my wrinkles marked by sleepless nights and years of struggles that taught me how to survive. And her, so confident, almost arrogant, as if she already had her future secured. It was like looking into a broken mirror. On one side, the mother who had always supported me. On the other, a daughter who was now trying to erase her own origins. I began to think about everything I had endured. The sidelong glances at work, as if an elderly black woman had nothing left to offer but exhaustion. The whispers of neighbors, sizing up my simple clothes, comparing them to the artificial shine of younger women. And now, inside my own home, the cruelty came from where I least expected it. It hurt me more than any malicious comments from strangers. It was my own blood trying to reduce me to dust. Perhaps that's why so many people choose to stay here, following each revelation, because they know the weight of carrying a lifetime of silence and injustice. It's not just my story. It's that of many people who have been treated as if their time was up, as if they no longer had the right to decide their own fate. I took a deep breath. I remembered every late night I washed other people's clothes to keep food on the table. Every crowded bus I rode standing up, carefully saving coins, dreaming of giving my daughter a more dignified life. And now she was telling me that the best thing would be my death. It was like spitting in the plate, but worse. She was spitting in the heart that had always beat for her. The image of the contract on the table wouldn't leave my mind. It seemed to stare at me, a living piece of paper, a witness to everything that was happening. There lay the key to something I didn't yet fully understand, but which would soon be revealed. And it was in that moment, still silent, that I realized When someone wishes their life would end, it's because they've already planned what to do with what's left of it. And I needed to find out exactly what they wanted to do with my absence. That night was too long. I lay in bed, my eyes open, staring at the time-stained ceiling. Every crack felt like a scar, reminding me of everything I'd ever endured. But what hurt now was different. It was as if someone had ripped away the last reason I had to believe there was still gratitude in the world. The silence in the house was heavy, but inside me there was a constant noise, like a distant drum beating steadily. I couldn't forget her gaze, that cold glow that didn't match the girl who once ran into my arms asking to be held. The question lingered. At what point did she stop seeing me as a mother and start seeing me only as an obstacle? I thought about the financing, about that contract on the table, which seemed to breathe on its own. It represented not just a monetary value, but the power to decide tomorrow. And if I disappeared, who would take control? The thought gave me chills. Fear mixed with anger, creating a strange force within me, as if the darkness they were trying to push me into was precisely what lit a flame within my chest. The images flashed by like a movie. I saw her as a teenager, throwing her notebook on the couch and complaining about not having the latest sneakers. I remembered taking out a secret loan to buy a used computer, just so she wouldn't be ridiculed at school. I remembered the looks of contempt I received from wealthier mothers, as if I'd crossed a line by trying to give more than I was entitled to. All those memories, which should have been bonds of affection, now weighed down like chains. It was like walking down a narrow hallway, lit by a dim bulb. With each step, the floor creaked, signaling that something was about to collapse. And yet I kept going, because deep inside me, I was certain that this humiliation wouldn't just be the end of a relationship, but the beginning of something much greater. Dawn arrived. The first ray of light entered through the window, gilding the worn furniture. The brightness contrasted with the darkness that still enveloped me. And in that contrast, I understood. When life tries to push you to the bottom of the pit, that's when you discover how far you can climb. And I knew. The escalation was just beginning. Something was hidden in the shadows of that cruel phrase. And what I would find by exposing that darkness would change everything once and for all. The morning brought with it a different, almost provocative silence. The smell of coffee wafted from the kitchen, but it didn't taste the same as before. It was too bitter, as if the air itself had absorbed the harshness of the words echoing within me. I looked out the window and saw children running down the street, laughing loudly, as if the world outside still had color. And I, inside that house, wondered at what point my life had lost its lightness. My daughter walked down the hallway, her steps firm, without sparing me a glance. In her haste, I noticed something I'd never seen so clearly. The absence of affection. That rush wasn't just physical. It was as if she were in a hurry to get rid of me. That detail, so simple, struck me deeper than shouting. Because sometimes indifference is crueler than direct offense. I sat at the table and let the memories come flooding back. I saw the birthday party where I'd improvised crepe paper balloons so she wouldn't feel different from her classmates. I remembered the suspicious looks from white mothers at the school gate when I'd arrive in my cleaning uniform, trying to hide my hands covered in chemicals. And I remembered her smile, small but full of pride, when she introduced me as my mom. That smile was gone. Perhaps it's at this point that many feel the urge to support this journey, leaving a silent signal that the message has touched them. Because, deep down, everyone knows the weight of loving and not being loved in equal measure. As I stirred my cold coffee, I wondered, will she ever see all I've done? Will youth, so blinded by ambition, ever understand that every achievement bears the marks of my skin, of my effort? These questions hung in the air, unanswered, but charged with a silent truth. And it was in that moment, amidst sweet memories and the bitterness of the present, that I realized something new. The strength that was emerging within me didn't come solely from pain. It also came from the memory of everything I'd been able to face. It was as if each past humiliation now served as cement to build a wall of resistance. I knew that history hadn't yet revealed its most serious cards. And that, behind that contract and that coldness, there was something hidden that would soon come to light, revealing the true game I had been thrown into without asking. The cup was still in front of me when I heard the metallic sound of the key turning in the door lock. It wasn't dawn, but the sensation was the same. A shiver ran through my body as if something were about to happen. Sunlight streamed through the cracks in the curtain, gilding the dust suspended in the air, and I felt small in this space that had always been mine, but which suddenly felt like foreign territory. Every gesture my daughter made, every firm step down the hallway, seemed rehearsed, as if she carried a rush that didn't include me. There was something beyond the coldness, something I couldn't yet name, but which already weighed like a stone on my chest. It was at that moment that I realized a bitter truth. When someone wishes you were gone, it's not just indifference. It's because they've already calculated what to do with the empty space you'd leave. The room seemed to bear witness to my restlessness. The worn furniture, inherited from times of hardship, held secrets from years of struggle. Every scratch on the wood was a reminder of a childhood created on the fly, of small dreams that I tried to transform into big ones for her. But now, looking around, I felt that entire past was being rewritten without my permission. It was like walking on thin ice. On one side, the hope that perhaps there might still be regret. On the other, the fear that darkness had already taken everything. My heart teetered between these two shores, and with each beat, I felt time speed up, as if something were about to crumble before me. I remembered a distant night when I took her to the hospital, small and feverish, and sat for hours on the hard chair, praying silently, unsure if I would ever see her smile again. That fear was immense, but different from what I feel now. Because back then there was uncertainty, but there was also love. Now, all that remained was the cruel clarity that she herself had turned me into a shadow. And deep within this charged silence, a suspicion began to form, still unformed, but impossible to ignore. Like a half-open door in a dark hallway, inviting the unknown. Something told me the contract on the table wasn't just paper. It was the trail of a greater secret, still hidden behind the haste and cold eyes of my own daughter. The suspicion that was growing in me was like a shadow that lengthened with each passing second. It wasn't just the contract on the table. It wasn't just the cruel phrase she'd said. It was everything. The cold gaze, the haste, the absence of any gesture of affection. I felt like I was in a room with the windows closed, where light still tried to enter through tiny cracks, but was constantly muffled by the darkness that dominated the space. As I watched my daughter from afar, I noticed how she moved around the house without hesitation, as if she were hers, as if I no longer had a place there. That simple detail pierced me like a thin blade. Because, while my body still occupied that space, my presence seemed to have already been erased from her memory. I was a shadow walking in my own history. It was strange how life could bring such opposite extremes together. I remembered the genuine joy of seeing her take her first steps, of hearing her laughter echo through the yard. I remembered the smell of baking bread, when we could still turn small gestures into great victories. Now, those memories shone like distant stars, visible but unreachable. A stark contrast to the coldness that surrounded me in the present. My heart swung like a pendulum. On one side, hope still lingered, whispering that perhaps there was an explanation, that perhaps it was just a moment. On the other, fear grew heavy, bringing with it the certainty that something bigger was being plotted, something that involved not only cruel words but also silent decisions that could erase me forever. With every breath, I felt like I was about to walk through an invisible door. On this side, pain and disappointment. On the other side, a truth that could change everything. But that door remained closed, forcing me to wait, forcing me to look for the signs, for the details hidden in the cracks of everyday life. And so I remained like someone holding their breath, feeling that the answer was close, but still out of reach. A suspended breath, on the brink of a secret that would soon be revealed. The feeling of being confronted with something hidden began to shape my every gesture. They were no longer just vague suspicions, but signs that repeated themselves, forming a silent pattern I could no longer ignore. The contract on the table seemed to pulse, as if each written line held a secret waiting to be deciphered. And while my daughter walked through the house with the confidence of someone who already owned everything, I observed silently. taking in each detail like someone putting together pieces of a puzzle. It was like walking through a field of parched earth, waiting for the first drop of rain. I knew something was about to break through, but it hadn't yet taken shape. This gap between what reveals itself and what remains hidden is where the mind works most. And it was there that I began to plan, not hastily, but with precision. With her every gesture, I saw not only her indifference, but also the reflection of what could happen to me if I didn't get up. Images flashed through my mind, blending past and future. I saw myself alone in an empty house, with cold walls, erased from my own history. But I also saw myself in another scene, standing tall before eyes that never imagined my strength, revealing every secret hidden in the shadows. These two images clashed within me, like the struggle between light and darkness. This contrast was what kept me awake. The fear of losing everything and the hope of turning the tables walked side by side, fueling a tension that prevented me from giving in. I knew that every misstep could be costly, but also that every strategic silence could give me the edge I needed. It's curious how stories like these awaken something in those who listen. Many, upon hearing these layers of pain and discovery, feel the urge to share their own experiences, as if a simple comment were also a form of resistance. Because when pain finds an echo, it ceases to be a solitary burden and transforms into shared strength. And so, holding on to words and expressions, I let time stretch out, aware that the revelation was still ahead. A greater secret, hidden right under my eyes, was waiting for the right moment to reveal itself, and I could already feel its breath close at hand. Time seemed to drag, but at the same time each second carried a different weight, as if the air were charged with something yet to be revealed. The days took on a strange rhythm. My daughter crossed the rooms with firm steps, and I, silently, became a spectator in a play in which, suddenly, I seemed to have lost the leading role. It was like watching my own life being rehearsed by someone else, while I hid behind the curtain, observing. The contract remained there, on the table, motionless, but alive to my eyes. I saw it like a sleeping body, ready to awaken at any moment. It was impossible not to feel that each printed word carried poison disguised as a promise. The mere touch of the paper gave me chills, as if the ink might burn my skin. But still it was impossible to look away. Nights became long. I'd get up to drink water and find myself standing in front of the mirror, staring at my own reflection. The dim hallway light etched deep lines into my wrinkles, reminding me of everything I'd already experienced and everything I could still lose. Uncertainty surrounded me like a fog. Did I still have the strength to face this? Or was I facing a game already decided, in which my presence was just a detail to be erased? And yet, at the same time, there was something inside me that refused to yield. It was small but firm, like a flame resistant to the wind. The memory of every battle I'd ever faced made me realize it wasn't just fear I carried. It was also a growing clarity, emerging between the cracks of pain, revealing that perhaps I had more power than I realized. This contrast was constant, my heart aching at my daughter's coldness, and my mind silently beginning to weave possibilities. With each of her gestures, I registered a new piece, a new clue. It was like walking through a dark maze, where every corner could be a threat, but could also be a way out. And the more I watched, the more I felt that the greater secret, hidden between the lines of the contract and in her silences, was about to be revealed. Something waited, just under the surface, like a contained whisper that could suddenly change everything. The hours began to weigh like stones on my shoulders. With each movement of my daughter, I felt as if the ground beneath my feet were slowly giving way, revealing an abyss that opened silently. There were no shouts, no direct confrontations, just a meticulous coldness, as if waiting for time to do its work of erasing. This absence of warmth was even crueler than any argument, because it seeped into the air of the house, making everything icy and colorless. Sometimes I closed my eyes and saw myself walking down a narrow corridor. To the right, the light of a past full of struggles, but also of small victories that sustained me until now. To the left, the shadow of an uncertain future, where my name could be forgotten like dust carried by the wind. I walked down this corridor with small steps, trying to maintain balance between the two sides, unsure which I would fall to. The contract on the table was no longer just paper. It was like a distorted mirror, reflecting possibilities that disturbed me. From one angle, it showed the promise of security, the fruit of years of sacrifice. From another, it revealed the threat of being replaced, discarded, erased like a scratched-out signature. This duality gnawed at me, creating a knot that not even tears could untie. Yet within me, a quiet voice was beginning to grow. It was fragile but persistent. It reminded me of nights without food, days of veiled humiliation, and stares that tried to reduce me to nothing. If I had survived all that, why would I give in now? Doubt haunted me, but confidence, still timid, began to rise like a thread of light piercing the darkness. This contrast between confidence and doubt was constant. There were moments when I believed I saw a clear way out, and others when everything seemed to be falling apart before me. My heart raced as if following this play of light and shadow, reinforcing the feeling that something crucial was about to be revealed. And so I remained, between memories that sustained me and uncertainties that tormented me, feeling that time was approaching a decisive point. The silence of the house seemed to hold its breath with me, as if all the furniture, walls, and shadows awaited, along with me, the revelation that still lurked on the horizon. That's when I realized my entire life had been preparing me for this moment. The heavy silence of the house no longer crushed me. Now it sounded like an empty stage about to receive its first light. I wasn't just a mother wounded by cruel words. I was the woman who had carried the weight of generations and who, faced with the threat of being erased, discovered within herself a strength many could never imagine. I looked at the contract again, and this time I saw it not as a sentence, but as a key. It represented not only what my daughter wanted to achieve at the cost of my absence, it was also proof that choices were still open to me. This realization transformed the fear into something else. It was like walking through a storm and suddenly noticing the sky begin to clear behind the clouds. The pain was still there, alive, but it no longer dominated me. It was fuel. Every memory of nights of effort, every look of contempt I endured in silence, now served as a brick in a wall built within me. I understood that the fragility she saw in me was only part of the story. The other part, hidden for years, was the capacity to resist and surprise. This contrast gave me new energy. Between challenge and achievement, between shadow and light, I found my place. And I realized something even deeper. There's a privilege in not giving up on yourself, in getting up even when others expect you to fall. And I felt this privilege as a rare gift, one that few recognize at the time, but which transforms everything around you. If you've made it this far, you may have also felt this movement within yourself. And it's in this silent recognition that many choose to leave a mark, whether with a gesture, a word, a comment, or even by signing up to stay on this journey. Because when a story resonates, it's not just mine, it becomes ours. And it was like that, facing the same walls that once seemed to imprison me, that I felt something shift. It wasn't yet a final resolution, but it was the birth of a certainty. I wasn't being erased. I was just beginning to write with my own hands the most powerful part of my story.